To your camera.
Start the backfire, Rodney.
Turn over.
Rodney, start the backfire.
Have you ever wondered why the massive airplane in Raiders of the Lost Ark looks so authentic, yet was never meant to fly? What if I told you Indiana Jones's most explosive showdown involved an aircraft that wasn't even the right model? These are 20 weird facts about Indiana Jones's Ford Trimotor that will completely change how you see that iconic desert scene. Number 20. It was not actually a Ford Trimotor.
Upon Indy finding the Ark, the Nazis seize it from him and plan to transport it back to Germany.
Here's the twist nobody expects. The aircraft looming behind Indy during that legendary fight scene was not a genuine Ford Trimotor at all. It was a full-scale mock-up built specifically for the production of Raiders of the Lost Ark. The real Ford Trimotor had 3 engines mounted high on a corrugated wing. But Spielberg's crew constructed a hybrid design inspired by a German Junkers transport to better fit the fictional Nazi airfield aesthetic. The filmmakers wanted something menacing, industrial, and visually aggressive. So instead of restoring a fragile 1930s relic, they fabricated a custom airframe around a steel skeleton and wooden ribs, then skinned it in corrugated metal to mimic the Trimotor's signature look. From a distance, it felt authentic. Up close, it was pure movie magic. The proportions were exaggerated to dominate the frame and tower over Harrison Ford during the brawl. It never flew, never taxied under its own power, and never left the Tunisian ground. Yet audiences still call it the Trimotor. That illusion is a testament to practical effects, craftsmanship at its peak. Number 19. The plane was built to explode. From the beginning, most movie vehicles are preserved after filming, not this one. From the earliest design meetings, the production team knew the aircraft would be destroyed in spectacular fashion. That meant engineering it backwards from the explosion. Special effects supervisor explosives carefully embedded breakaway joints into the fuselage, tail, and wing roots, so the fireball would tear the plane apart in a controlled, cinematic way. The structure had to look heavy and real, yet disintegrate safely around actors and stunt performers. Hidden charges were mapped to detonate in a precise sequence, creating the illusion of catastrophic fuel ignition. The spinning propeller, the rolling flames, the collapsing tail. Every moment was pre-planned like a choreographed dance. It was one of the largest practical explosions attempted at the time, and once it blew, there were no second takes. The aircraft you see disintegrating on screen was a one-shot gamble. If anything misfired, the budget would have taken a devastating hit. Instead, the explosion became one of the most replayed moments in adventure cinema history. Number 18. The spinning propeller was terrifyingly real. That rotating propeller wasn't a lightweight plastic prop. It was powered by a real engine rigged to spin at a dangerous speed. The production team insisted on authenticity. The blade had weight, it had momentum, and it could absolutely injure someone if timing failed. During the fight sequence, Harrison Ford and the stunt crew performed dangerously close to the moving prop. The secret was in the use of forced perspective and careful blocking. The blade was positioned farther from the actors than it appeared, and clever camera angles compressed the space, making it seem inches from Indy's face. Even so, the cast described the sound as deafening, and the air pressure intense. Sand blasted everywhere. The prop wash whipped clothing violently. Adding realism no fan could fake, the tension you feel watching that scene is genuine. There were no digital safety nets in 1980. If someone mistimed a cue, the consequences would have been severe. The realism of that spinning blade is why the moment still feels raw decades later. Number 17. Tunisia's heat nearly destroyed the set. First, filming took place in the brutal desert climate of Tunisia, where daytime temperatures soared to punishing extremes. Corrugated metal absorbs heat like an oven, and the aircraft skin became dangerously hot to the touch. Crew members had to wear gloves when adjusting panels. Paint blistered under the sun. Adhesive softened. The set warped slightly between takes as expansion and contraction stressed the framework. Water had to be sprayed on portions of the plane just to cool surfaces enough for actors to lean against them safely. The sand itself became a production enemy, clogging mechanical components and jamming the propeller rig. Electrical lines powering lighting and effects had to be constantly cleaned. The desert environment unintentionally added realism. The glare, the sweat, the dust swirling in every frame. That was not an artificial atmosphere. It was survival filmmaking. The plane did not merely serve as a backdrop. It became a heat-soaked antagonist of its own. The crew later joked that Tunisia nearly destroyed the aircraft before the explosion ever could. Number 16. The aircraft was designed to make Indy look small. This wasn't just a plane, it was psychological staging. Director Steven Spielberg understood visual scale better than almost anyone. The aircraft was intentionally oversized relative to the surrounding vehicles and extras. Its wingspan dominated the frame, and its tail towered above the airfield trucks. This exaggerated size made Indiana Jones appear vulnerable, almost swallowed by industrial machinery and military might. The Nazi soldiers felt like ants beside it, but Indy felt human, fragile. The plane symbolized the unstoppable war machine he was up against. Production designers widened the fuselage slightly beyond authentic proportions to enhance that dominance. Even the camera lenses were chosen carefully. Wider lenses made the aircraft stretch dramatically across the horizon. The result is subtle but powerful. You subconsciously register the imbalance of power before a single punch is thrown. The plane is not just scenery, it is visual storytelling. It frames Indy as one man standing against an overwhelming force. And when it finally explodes, it feels like more than destruction. It feels like rebellion. Number 15. The aircraft's engines were pure illusion. Look closely at the engines mounted on the wing, and you will notice something strange. They look heavy, mechanical, and fully functional, yet they were mostly hollow shells. The production team fabricated lightweight engine housings from fiberglass and thin aluminum to reduce structural stress on the mock airframe. Inside, there were no roaring radial power plants, no complex fuel systems, no spinning crankshafts. Instead, small concealed motors powered only what the camera needed to see. Partial prop rotation and subtle vibration. Smoke effects were piped through hidden tubes to simulate exhaust. The illusion was so convincing that aviation enthusiasts initially believed a restored transport had been modified for filming. In reality, the engines were designed strictly for visual credibility under harsh sunlight and close-up photography. They needed to look authentic from every angle without adding dangerous weight to a set piece destined for destruction. That careful balance between realism and practicality made the aircraft believable while keeping it controllable for stunt choreography and pyrotechnics. Number 14. The plane's wheels were reinforced for combat. The landing gear might seem like background detail, easy to overlook amid spinning propellers and roaring fire, but it was engineered with surprising strength and purpose. Unlike a museum aircraft that would simply rest on static supports or be displayed behind velvet ropes, this plane had to survive chaos. It needed to endure running fights, heavy stunt impacts, and the shifting weight of performers scrambling over and around it. Actors would slam into the tires, dive behind the struts for cover, and brace themselves against the metal supports during intense choreography. If the landing gear flexed too much or shifted unexpectedly, the illusion of a real, grounded aircraft would vanish instantly. To prevent that, steel-reinforced axles were installed beneath decorative outer wheel covers that mimicked period styling. The tires themselves were modern rubber compounds selected for durability and shock absorption, then aged visually to appear authentic to the 1930s setting. Internally, the wheel assemblies were anchored to a stabilized base frame that distributed weight evenly across the structure. This reinforcement allowed stunt performers to repeatedly collide with the landing gear without risking collapse or tipping over. During rehearsals, crew members stress-tested the wheels relentlessly. They pushed, rocked, and even partially lifted sections of the aircraft to ensure nothing would buckle under pressure. Stability was not optional, it was essential. On screen, the effect is subtle, yet powerful. You see Indiana Jones duck behind a massive tire, roll through sand beneath the wing, or slam against a strut during the fight. and the aircraft remains unshaken. That unwavering solidity grounds the sequence in physical reality. It anchors the chaos. Without reinforced landing gear, every impact would have revealed the prop's fragility. Instead, the structure absorbs punishment convincingly, reinforcing the sense that this is a formidable machine capable of withstanding battle, at least until the flames finally consume it. Number 13. The corrugated skin was hand-aged for authenticity. The distinctive ribbed metal skin was not salvaged from a scrapyard relic or stripped from a forgotten hangar. It was newly fabricated sheet metal, custom cut and pressed to achieve that unmistakable corrugated texture associated with early transport aircraft. Fresh from the workshop, however, it looked exactly that. Fresh, smooth, uniform, and lifeless under the sun. To make it believable, the art department embarked on a meticulous aging process that required both technical precision and artistic instinct. Every panel was treated as a canvas. Craftspeople introduced dents in carefully chosen locations, not randomly, but where natural wear would occur. Along access points, near fasteners, around cargo areas, and beside structural joints. Scuffs were applied with abrasive tools to mimic decades of maintenance and hurried ground handling. Oil streaks were hand-painted, then feathered outward to suggest airflow and repeated engine seepage. Subtle oxidation patterns were layered into the metal, built up gradually so they would read authentically under camera scrutiny. No two panels were identical. That irregularity was deliberate. Paint was applied in multiple coats, then selectively sanded back to expose hints of underlying primer and bare metal. This simulated years of repainting and patchwork repairs. Dark washes were brushed into the corrugated grooves, deepening shadows and preventing the harsh desert sunlight from flattening the surface. Even minor imperfections were intentional. A slightly uneven seam or faint discoloration became storytelling tools. They implied history. The goal was simple but demanding. Convince audiences that this aircraft had crossed continents before landing in that remote North African airstrip. Texture achieved what dialogue never needed to explain. The plane felt lived in, not constructed. In direct sunlight, untreated corrugated metal can appear visually flat and sterile. By aging the surface strategically, the production created depth for the camera to capture, allowing highlights to shimmer and shadows to carve dramatic lines across the fuselage. The result was an aircraft that appeared heavy, weathered, and fully operational. Viewers believed it had a past, even though it had been assembled only weeks before filming began. Number 12. The tail section hid pyrotechnic surprises. The towering tail was more than a dramatic backdrop looming over the runway. It functioned as a carefully engineered delivery system for one of the most complex pyrotechnic moments in the sequence. From the outside, it appeared to be a rigid, immovable vertical stabilizer, riveted and solid, casting long shadows across the sand. Inside, however, it concealed part of the explosive rigging network that would ultimately reduce the aircraft to flaming debris. Special effects technicians embedded precisely measured controlled charges within the hollow framework of the tail. These were not random blasts. They were calculated bursts designed to create a ripple effect that would travel upward through the structure once ignition began. Wiring snaked through internal channels carved into the skeleton of the tail, hidden beneath metal skin and disguised seams. Every cable was routed to avoid detection by the camera, while still remaining accessible to the pyrotechnics team. When the fuel explosion sequence was triggered, the tail section did not simply shatter. It split along pre-cut seams, strategically weakened during construction. These hidden fracture lines guided the destruction, allowing flame and debris to burst outward in a dramatic yet controlled pattern. What looks like catastrophic structural failure on screen was in fact a carefully mapped collapse. Each panel had been numbered and diagrammed in advance to determine how and when it would detach. Technicians calculated blast pressure so that fragments would arc away from performers rather than toward them. The tail had to remain completely rigid during the fight choreography, supporting the illusion of unstoppable industrial power. Then, within seconds, it needed to disintegrate convincingly under the force of ignition. That transformation from imposing mass to flaming wreckage required structural choreography as precise as any stunt routine. Nothing about the collapse was accidental. The upward ripple of fire, the splitting metal, and the cascading debris were all pre-planned elements of a destructive ballet. Chaos was the visual goal, but control was the engineering reality. The result feels explosive and unpredictable, yet it unfolded exactly as designed, delivering spectacle without sacrificing safety. Bolt. Number 11. The plane scale. Helped mask. Editing. Cuts.
Who is also a real-life pilot. Harrison Ford did something accidentally to the plane.
One of the cleverest filmmaking tricks involving the aircraft had nothing to do with explosions, fireballs, or spinning propellers. Its sheer physical scale became an editorial tool. Because the plane occupied so much visual real estate, editors were able to conceal multiple fight cuts inside what appears to be a single, fluid confrontation. The broad wing surfaces, towering tail, and expansive fuselage panels frequently filled the frame, creating natural visual wipes as the camera tracked the action. Whenever Indiana Jones darted around the aircraft, the lens would momentarily glide across ribbed metal or pass behind a strut, briefly obscuring the choreography. Those split-second visual blocks gave editors the perfect opportunity to splice together separate takes without drawing attention to the cut. The plane effectively became a moving curtain. A pan across corrugated aluminum could connect footage shot hours apart, under slightly different lighting conditions, and even with subtle changes in sand texture. Because the audience's eye was focused on motion rather than static detail, the transitions felt organic. The fight, therefore, appears continuous and breathless, escalating in one relentless arc. In reality, it was constructed from numerous carefully staged fragments, each refined for safety and impact. Without such a dominant object anchoring the frame, those editorial seams would have been far more visible. A smaller set piece would have exposed continuity gaps and disrupted pacing. Instead, the aircraft's bulk provided dynamic coverage opportunities that only a massive practical prop could offer. It did more than serve as scenery or spectacle. It shaped the rhythm of the scene itself, subtly guiding how tension rose and how momentum carried forward from one punch, fall, and near miss to the next. Number 10. The plane was inspired by a different aircraft. Entirely. Here is where aviation purists raise an eyebrow. While audiences call it a Ford Trimotor, the silhouette actually borrows heavily from the German Junkers Ju-52 transport aircraft. Production designers studied archival photographs of pre-war European cargo planes to create something that felt unmistakably Axis, without naming a real military designation. The Ford Trimotor had smoother proportions and distinctly American lineage, which did not align with the desert airfield setting. By blending trimotor corrugation with Junkers-style stance and engine placement, the art department created a fictional hybrid that looked historically plausible, yet legally safe. It avoided directly portraying a specific wartime machine while still evoking authoritarian machinery. That hybridization is why aviation fans often debate what they are truly seeing. The plane is cinematic shorthand rather than strict historical replication. It feels authentic because it borrows visual language from multiple real aircraft, then exaggerates their harshest angles. That creative fusion allowed the filmmakers to sidestep licensing complications and build something uniquely theirs. Number 9. The aircraft's interior never existed. Despite its imposing exterior, the aircraft had no functional interior set connected to the fuselage. The doorways and windows were shallow facades backed by temporary framing. When characters appear near openings, they are interacting with partial structures rather than a complete cabin. Interior aviation shots in the film were staged on separate soundstage builds unrelated to the desert prop. This separation allowed lighting crews total control without fighting harsh outdoor glare. It also meant the exterior shell could remain structurally simple and lightweight. If you freeze certain frames, you will notice that windows reflect the sky rather than reveal depth. That illusion worked because the sequence focuses on exterior action. Viewers subconsciously assume a cabin exists inside. In truth, it was never necessary to build one. The aircraft functioned purely as a battlefield obstacle and explosive centerpiece, not as transportation. By eliminating unnecessary internal construction, the production saved time and budget while maintaining complete visual believability. Number 8. The plane's shadow. That was used as a cinematic weapon. Subtle yet brilliant choice was the way the aircraft's shadow dominates the sand. The broad wing cast a dark moving shape across the runway, creating dynamic contrast against the bright desert floor. Cinematographers positioned actors within that shadow to enhance tension and visual depth. As characters move in and out of shade, the lighting shifts dramatically, heightening the sense of danger. The shadow also masked stunt pads and ground rigging placed for safety. By choreographing the fight within areas of alternating light and darkness, the production turned natural sunlight into an expressive tool. That looming wing shadow feels almost predatory, like a mechanical beast hovering above the action. It reinforces the scale of the machine without additional dialogue or exposition. The aircraft does not merely sit in the background. Its presence is literally cast across the battlefield. That interplay between sunlight and steel adds texture that no digital effect could replicate. Number 7. The explosion required military-level coordination.
Backfire, Rodney. Rodney, start the backfire.
The climactic detonation was not simply a matter of lighting fuel and stepping back. A coordinated team of pyrotechnicians, safety officers, and stunt supervisors rehearsed the sequence extensively before cameras rolled. Fire suppression crews stood just outside the frame, with equipment ready. Wind conditions were monitored continuously, since shifting gusts could unpredictably redirect flames. The explosion had to look massive, yet remain contained within predetermined safety zones. Actors were positioned at calculated distances, and protective barriers were disguised as set pieces. Once ignited, the blaze rapidly consumed the aircraft, sending debris skyward exactly as planned. The roar and shockwave were genuine, prompting authentic reactions from performers. Because the build was designed for single-use destruction, every department had to execute flawlessly on the first attempt. The result feels spontaneous, but it was the product of meticulous preparation. That orchestration ensured cinematic spectacle without the risk of uncontrolled hazards. Number 6. The plane became an unofficial character. By the time the fight reaches its peak, the aircraft feels almost sentient. Its spinning blades threaten lives. Its metal skin traps characters in narrow spaces. Its looming mass defines the battlefield. Screenwriting subtly positions the plane as more than background machinery. It is an obstacle, a hazard, and ultimately a symbol of oppressive power. When it explodes, the destruction reads as a narrative victory, rather than random chaos. Audiences cheer not just because villains fall, but because the machine itself is defeated. This transformation from prop to character is rare. It happens through framing, sound design, and choreography. The metallic groans, the engine roar, and the towering silhouette all contribute personality. Few adventure films turn equipment into a storytelling force so effectively. The plane's demise marks a turning point in the story's momentum, clearing the runway for the next act of pursuit and revelation. Number 5. The plane helped redefine, but practical effects in adventure cinema. By the time Raiders of the Lost Ark hit theaters, audiences had seen explosions before, but not staged with this level of tactile realism integrated into hand-to-hand combat. The aircraft sequence became a benchmark for how large-scale practical props could elevate action storytelling. Instead of relying on miniatures or rear projection, the filmmakers committed to building something full-sized that actors could physically interact with. That decision influenced a generation of adventure directors who studied the sequence frame by frame. The sheer physicality of metal, sand, fire, and motion created stakes that felt immediate. Industry professionals later cited the plane fight as proof that scale and proximity matter more than spectacle alone. The prop did not exist in isolation. It was choreographed with performers, cameras, and environmental elements to produce kinetic energy that still holds up decades later. Film schools analyzed this scene when teaching practical effects coordination. The aircraft's destruction became a case study in controlled chaos executed flawlessly. It demonstrated that when craftsmanship meets bold vision, even a stationary plane can become the most thrilling character on screen. Number 4. The desert location was chosen to enhance the aircraft's profile. The decision to stage the scene on an open Tunisian runway was not random. The production needed uninterrupted horizon lines to emphasize the aircraft's mass and silhouette. With no trees or structures competing for attention, the plane dominated every wide shot. The barren environment also amplified sound design, allowing engine noise and metal impacts to echo starkly against the emptiness. That acoustic openness intensified tension. Cinematographers positioned the aircraft against low sun angles, so its ribbed surfaces would cast long shadows across the sand. The flat terrain made it easier to hide camera tracks and stunt rigging beneath the surface while preserving visual authenticity. In many frames, the aircraft appears isolated, almost stranded in a hostile landscape, which mirrors Indiana Jones's precarious position. The environment and machine work together as storytelling devices. Had the plane been staged inside a cluttered hangar, its presence would have felt diminished. Instead, the desert turned it into a monolithic centerpiece, giving the action room to breathe while reinforcing the scale of impending destruction. Number 3. The plane's sound design was layered from multiple sources. Although the engines were largely visual constructs, the soundscape was painstakingly crafted in the post-production, with extraordinary attention to detail. The aircraft seen on screen did not produce the thunderous roar audiences remember. Instead, audio engineers built that sonic identity from the ground up. They layered recordings from vintage radial engines, industrial ventilation systems, aging tractor motors, and even modified motorcycle revs captured in controlled studio environments. Each element was adjusted in pitch and tempo to create a composite engine voice that felt both period accurate and cinematically intimidating. The propellers were deepened and slowed slightly during mixing, giving it a weighty, predatory quality. Rather than sounding like a lightweight fan, it rumbled with authority. Metallic groans and stress creaks were introduced during moments of impact to suggest the strain of riveted panels under force. When fists connect with metal or bodies slam against the fuselage, those impacts were reinforced using studio-recorded sheet metal strikes and resonant clangs. Subtle rattles were added beneath dialogue to maintain the illusion that the aircraft was idling restlessly, even when unseen. This auditory layering transformed what was essentially a silent prop into a living mechanical presence. Sound designers understood that realism is perceived as much through the ear as through the eye. Without that intricate mix, the sequence would feel visually impressive but emotionally flat. The roar associated with the aircraft is therefore a deliberate cinematic composition. It was sculpted to evoke menace, scale, and urgency. That immersive sound environment elevated the machine from a background object to an active participant, making every movement feel consequential and every close call resonate with mechanical intensity. Number 2. The aircraft sequence was shot out of order for safety. Contrary to what the seamless edit suggests, the fight around the aircraft was filmed in carefully segmented phases, each designed to balance spectacle with safety. The production did not simply roll the cameras and ignite the plane. Instead, non-explosive combat beats were completed first, allowing the actors and stunt performers to rehearse every punch, fall, and near miss without the added pressure of fire or debris. Safe distance markers were placed in the sand to indicate where future pyrotechnics would be set off. These markers were subtle enough to remain invisible on camera, but crucial for spatial awareness during rehearsals. Once those physical interactions were captured, the crew reset the aircraft for partial destruction shots. Panels were pre-weakened, fuel lines were dressed for visual effect, and select scorch patterns were applied incrementally to simulate progressive damage. After those mid-level beats were complete, the final detonation was staged only after the principal actors had cleared the danger zone entirely. What appears on screen as one escalating confrontation was actually assembled from multiple shooting days under varying environmental conditions. This fragmented schedule demanded meticulous tracking of continuity, sand displacement, footprint patterns, bent metal, and even minor scorch marks were photographed and logged between takes. Crew members documented wind direction and sunlight angles to preserve visual consistency. Shooting out of order also allowed stunt coordinators to refine choreography after reviewing earlier footage, adjusting timing and positioning to heighten suspense. The final edit stitches these carefully separated fragments into what feels like uninterrupted chaos. That illusion is a triumph of disciplined planning. It protected the cast while preserving relentless narrative momentum. Viewers never perceive the segmentation because editing, sound design, and performance merge the pieces into one explosive cinematic crescendo. Number 1. The plane's destruction became a defining image of the franchise. When audiences think of Indiana Jones battling overwhelming odds, many recall the silhouette of that towering aircraft moments before it erupts in flame. The destruction scene crystallized the franchise's commitment to practical spectacle and daring physical storytelling. It symbolized resilience against mechanized tyranny and became one of the most frequently replayed sequences in the history of adventure cinema. The image of that corrugated metal giant dominating the desert runway, only to be consumed in a roaring inferno, feels mythic. It captures everything the series represents: scale, danger, grit, and the triumph of one stubborn hero against impossible machinery. Merchandise, posters, and retrospectives often feature the fiery wreckage as shorthand for the film's intensity. Behind the scenes, documentaries still revisit the sequence as a masterclass in controlled chaos. Over time, the plane has transcended its brief screen presence to become an icon of the series' tone, blending danger, humor, and explosive payoff. The fight around it balances brutality with wit, tension with visual spectacle. Its demise punctuates the narrative with cathartic release, clearing the path for the story's next pursuit, while leaving an indelible visual imprint in the audience's memory. Few props achieve that level of cultural permanence. Though built to burn, the aircraft's legacy endured far beyond the smoke. It stands as proof that physical craftsmanship, bold staging, and fearless execution can elevate even a temporary set piece into something timeless. Long after the flames died out in the desert, that plane continued soaring through cinematic history as one of adventure film's most unforgettable images. And there you have it. 20 weird facts about Indiana Jones's unforgettable desert aircraft that prove it was far more than background scenery. Built to burn, engineered to intimidate, and crafted with meticulous practical detail, that so-called Ford Trimotor became one of the most explosive set pieces in adventure film history. Every dent, shadow, roar, and fireball added to the legend. Which facts surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below. And if you love deep dives into iconic movie machines, make sure to like, subscribe, and buckle up for the next adventure.